It was really fun. Okay. Cool. Thanks, Laura. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm just going to do 3 main things of the speech. CO, OO, OG. I think, unfortunately, CO did not listen to any of the principled analysis coming from Laura's case, but insofar as we're just going to go through their speech and take it down, because I think Laura probably did a lot of preemptive work on this, on like the hierarchy of needs, the social mobility you get, and the coercion that you get if you are a pirate, and like this, like, and I think adding new framing specifically in response to a lot of what closing opposition said. I think some new principled weighing I think I want to add to this debate. First of all, they say you have an active choice into piracy. I think, first of all, they just assert this. The whole of the government bench has said that pirates tend to be poorer people, specifically, who are pushed into this, because why else would they have the incentive to get gold? Why else would they have the incentive to get greed? This is particularly because there are poorer people who specifically pushed into this. Insofar as there's class divides in the 1700s, specifically, you would not need to be a pirate, specifically, if you were not the poorest of the poor, because this is like a life of crime. Poorer people were subjugated, because they are the proletariat, into doing specific manual factory jobs, right? You wouldn't turn into a pirate because that's something you've been socialized into. I think we show in closing government that you're likely to be the poorest of the poor. I think this is the analysis that proves that. Opening government, unfortunately, didn't do that. So insofar that is probably the case, I think there are a couple of things specifically to say. You do not make an active choice into piracy because this is coerced, right? I think when Laura talks about the hierarchy of needs, you cannot access any of the hierarchy of needs. But regardless of the wealth that you get as a moderately wealthy pirate, that is still a coerced choice which has no consent. To the point at which consent is fundamental to the human psyche, I think that is specifically something that is immoral for you to specifically buy into, and I think that you don't get any of this active choice into piracy that I think closing opposition talks about. I think, look, you get all of these you think this oppressive policies, things like that. I think that, look, I think if you can flip all these oppressive policies that are specifically pushed onto you, if you are able to have the social mobility specifically, if you are being a captain, right? If closing opposition concede that governments are poor and that's why they've got you, they're more likely specifically to be desperate and keep you, and that's why they promoted you to captain. Note the info side, and note that many people during this time after the proclamation were under His Majesty's Navy, so you're more likely to specifically get the job, and you've got a contractual obligation specifically, you've entered into a social contract with the state, and that is better for social mobility on a principled basis, and that's something you should care about, because the social contract doesn't exist, which is why opening opposition is out of the debate. But insofar as the state can fulfill some level of social contract, I think that is better, because that lowers the state monopoly on violence against you specifically, and that is better for you as a human being, specifically for your own autonomy, right? I think that's specifically important. Then they say you can live freely. I just gave you principle weighing specifically on why it's a coercive choice. Laura already talked about the hierarchy of needs. No response to that. I think it's kind of shitty that I think that member of opposition responded to none of closing up our case, because then I can't push back on anything that they responded to us on. Right. But I think let's just do the weighing anyway. I think that it's not freedom, because it's like fake freedom. It's coercive, right? You will never feel like you're feeling free because of the isolation that Laura talked about, the internal trauma specifically of the crew that may mutiny against you at any point in time. And you have and generally in the 1700s, due to the very Catholic nature of it and the law and justice, you really have a deontological perspective on specifically what is right and wrong. And to the point at which justice is you feel like you're doing things wrong internally, you're probably likely to have internally you feel like you're doing the wrong thing because you've been pushed into this, and this is a coercive choice, which is more likely to specifically create power asymmetries. On our side of the house, you balance this power asymmetry specifically by having the social mobility that you get. What do we care about? Because this is Laura was the only person to do extra incentives in this entire debate. Look, pirates are specifically isolated people. They care about money, fame, and gold and things like that, right? The point at which this is important. When you become a proper captain, all these women in the 1700s probably glorify you. You get fame, you get money, and it's already have a specialist knowledge. You're more likely to be promoted up the ranks, like Laura told you. You have consent specifically into this, and the king has given you this thing, so you're more likely specifically to be trusted by the king, and you're more likely to get the agency that you deserve, right? To the point at which you never get agency or self-fulfillment on the status quo, because you'll never climb up the ranks of being a pirate, because you're a moderate pirate. Note all of government's analysis about why pirates are just better than you, because they've got loads of ships, they've got loads of crew, and all the people at the top will always beat you, because that's how the hierarchy works. You're pretty internalized trauma to the point at which you can never be a successful pirate, and this money will always run out at some point. The fact that you're bearing this load is more likely to create like trauma and things like that. So you don't actually enjoy the pirate life. I don't think there was any pushback structural analysis from closing opposition. They can't do it now because you can't do new substantive in the way. So I think, look, what does Laura tell you? Insofar as you're probably likely to protection, you can manipulate inside the Navy to the point where you have this insider knowledge. You can take out all of your enemies, specifically, like Laura told you. So you can, if you ever decide to return to the pirate, because often pardons are refreshed to the point at which the king dies, that is important in this debate, because then you can manipulate a Navy to be able to subtly do nudges, specifically to get these pirates off your radar. And then when you become a pirate later down the line, I think you're more likely to do that, like Blackbeard did. That's a historical example of what happened specifically. I'll take Naomi at like 5:45. I think let's go on to top half. Like, I know in like BP, everyone's like, oh, top half deadlock, and you're gaslighting the judges, but literally top half is in a deadlock. I think they both like try to burden push specifically against each other, why there's likely to die and why you're not likely to die. This is not the debate, right? Otherwise, dying or not dying is not the comparative. The comparative is about social mobility and the things you're able to access on the comparative. I think therefore we already weigh against top half, but doing more structural analysis, right? I think that there are a couple of things. First of all, look, you need close ties to capture. Look, I think CO and OO have both said, but the state's very good, and like they're building their armies up, they're trying to get pirates on board. Like, you're probably going to be backed by government resources. That's comparatively on our side of the house. Naomi, go.
Being coerced into piracy is an inherent harm if the outcome of the